Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Evan, you look different.
What do you mean?
Your impression of Evan is to seduce the listeners.
Hello.
And now people are definitely going to think it's Evan. All right, folks, remote episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. I've said the dead of summer how many times now, but it really does feel like it. It's remote because we have Max Bultman on this episode, filling in for Evan, who's still away. We're here. We're still doing this thing. It is a slow summer. Max, how have you been?
I've been good. Got some good downtime. I can't say I'm quite like itching to be back yet, but it's starting to come around, right? Like you start to get that, I saw World Junior Summer Showcase live. I went to Minneapolis for that. Now you're seeing stuff out of the Holinka and you start to feel those muscles kind of being like, hey, shouldn't I be in a rink right now? So it's coming. I'm not itching yet, but it's coming.
I feel you. I'm not fully there, but I can see it over the horizon. The light's starting to peek over. Brad went to the LCA, but not for hockey purposes. So the foreshadowing is coming.
Yeah, it's just it's that feeling of like, shouldn't I be doing something right now? And for the first month after free agency, I don't feel that way at all. Candidly, I feel like what I should be doing is trying to get some sunshine in my life. But by this point, like it does feel close enough that I'm like, yeah, okay.
Well, I appreciate you still making the time during what is still decidedly summer vacation and stepping in. I'm sure Evan, when he listens back to this episode, he absolutely will, of course. He'll feel the same way. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Max Bultman.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, late night episode, by the way, so please forgive Max and Brad. It's my fault I put us late today, but late night recording. We were going to chat about the blockbuster signing that all the insiders were teasing all offseason, that this is going to be a busy summer. Travis Hamonic to the Detroit Red Wings, which is what everyone's been waiting for. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the decor. We'll discuss where Max is at on some of the things that we've been talking about recently on the show and what's coming up for the Red Wings this season, the rest of the summer, if anything, and we'll see what else we get into before overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know that the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to our bonus overtime episodes and our bonus off-season episodes. Our poutine blind taste test video has nothing to do with hockey, but just some fun bonus content for the patrons is going up soon, as well as a bunch of other stuff as we're catching up on our summer content. You get access to all of our giveaways, the Discord. We give away 2 tickets in season to every Detroit Red Wings home game. All that and lots more. Again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. 1 year, $1 million. What would you do for it? Would you play right D for the Detroit Red Wings? Third pair, seventh defenseman?
Yeah, Ryan, I'm not sensing a lot of enthusiasm for this signing. I mean, I thought this was the show that was the most in favor of a 35-year-old right-shot defenseman who once played for the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I'm not going to be in favor. Max, that's good. I was going to say I'm not going to be in favor of that for another 3 and a bit years and after I've played for the Ottawa Senators. But yeah, is it unfair to say this is just short-term version of the Justin Holl signing? Because Travis Hamonic he's 35, and it's been a while since his on-ice impacts have looked good to the eye test or the numbers. So I guess, Max, we'll start with you. Walk us through your thoughts on the signing and the why behind it.
My thoughts are, I think it's just depth, right? I mean, like we can talk about the numbers. I think if you compare him to Justin Holl, the underlying numbers look a bit worse. The usage was a little bit harder. It probably equals out to he's a very similar player to Justin Holl. Is that an upgrade? No. But I think what you're talking about here is that you had a decor that had 7 players on it. I think you can obviously have 7 defensemen and call guys up, but I think there is some utility to just having a little extra depth, a little more, whether it's the veteran factor, whether it's as simple as just like, yeah, we know what we're getting out of him. We know what we can and can't do with him. We can practice with, 4 defense pairs instead of mixing in, that your seventh guy has to play with. You're splitting up your pairs in practice to mix in that seventh guy, basically. I know, there's an advantage to having 8 defensemen on a roster, which you can't do when you have 3 goalies, and the Red Wings don't have 3 goalies anymore. So to me, this was not like a big, it's a big deal because it's August and it's the only thing happening. But I didn't strike this as like, how different is it from William Lagesson, who was going to be probably in that position if he's not in Grand Rapids, and now he looks like he is ticketed for Grand Rapids. I don't know. I don't have a problem with it because if you at any point you don't want the deal, it's a 1-year, $1 million deal. You can bury the whole thing in Grand Rapids if you need to. You can do whatever. It's not stopping him from doing anything. It's just not exciting is the situation, right? This doesn't change my perception of the Detroit Red Wings one way or another. I think if anything, the reaction can be attributed to like Yzerman kind of left these breadcrumbs the last time we heard from him after July 1 that like, yeah, maybe there's still something out there we would want to do. Obviously, if this was that, nobody's excited. I don't think this is the kind of thing that he was referring to at that point.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. This isn't what he was thinking. And I like your perspective on like the Lagesson replacement because it's a really good way to think about it. Because the reaction, and I don't blame people because I had the same one, but the reaction to this is much the same as the reaction to Justin Holl, which is we just watched this guy play for a divisional opponent, and probably a good amount of us watched him at some point and said, wow, not good. Or, said, yeah, he sucks. And then, now he's a Red Wing. But I mean, Lagesson, you were talking to us before we hit record, and you said, like, what's the difference between him and Lagesson on ice impacts? Can you confidently say that one would be better, one would be worse? No, I'd
take Hamonic. I mean, Hamonic played 60 NHL games last year for a team that made the playoffs, right? I'd take him over Lagesson. No shade to Lagesson, but I think he's a slight upgrade on Lagesson, and that's why he's making slightly more money, and that's why it made sense to do it. But I just think that's my bar, right? People want, it's like, is it an upgrade on Justin Holl? I don't know, but I don't know that he's playing over Justin Holl. And if he does, okay, it's the same thing then, basically.
Part of me thinks that maybe this is the team, and there could be injury that we don't know about, yes, and there could be moves in the pipeline that they're planning on, sure. But part of me also thinks that this could be that they know the Justin Holl experiment's over, and just because there's a year left on the contract doesn't mean they think they're going to play him successfully. So they're like, if we get down to that 7th D-man or Bernard Docker's not fitting or someone gets hurt, we don't want to have to put in Holl. So we'll just put in someone who costs us effectively nothing if we're not using him. And if it's not Holl, but kind of the same, then what does it matter? You're exactly right. It's just not exciting. And it's the reaction to this is a product of a fan base that is really keen on making up those few points away they feel like they are from the playoffs. And it's just kind of the order of operations that moves are coming in that is burning more than anything else.
If this deal happened on July 2 at 4 p.m., I don't think the reaction would have been quite as like, because I think it just felt, like I said, I think it felt like there was these breadcrumbs that was like, oh, something's coming. And then you get that, we all get the Twitter notification, Detroit Red Wings tweeted, update. And you're like, what is this? And it's, it's a depth move, right? And it's fine. He's 35, right? It's nothing against Travis Hamonic. He's had a really good career. He's 35. And at some point, time comes for everybody, right? But it wouldn't shock me if Travis Hamonic is the 5th or 6th defenseman on this team for stretches. It wouldn't shock me if he's the 7th or 8th defenseman on this team for stretches. And I don't think whichever one it is meaningfully changes the outlook of the team from when we could have said the exact same thing about Justin Holl a week ago, and it would have been true, right? The Red Wings blue line is going to be defined by what happens, in my opinion, by what happens on the second pair with, I would expect, Simon Edvinsson and Albert Johansson, right? And if Hamonic is on the second pair, then it's a fair conversation, right? If it's like he's taking Jeff Petry's spot next to Edvinsson, okay, all of a sudden that's a bigger deal for us to talk about. But going into this season, I think my expectation is that Edvinsson and Johansson worked well together. They're both young. They're both still growing. I would expect you're going to see at least him get a chance at some point at that role, and probably early. And if those two are ready to level up, that's where the improvement comes in. And if they're not, I mean, it's going to be very hard to improve if those two guys aren't driving it, because they're the young guys who have the most runway to improve. It's the perfect time in their careers for them to improve. If it's not happening, from them, who is that improvement coming from? Because they didn't make a big splash. I guess it's Bernard Docker, and you're hoping you found a Jake Wollman kind of situation, and maybe you did. But to me, it just all comes back to Edvinsson and Johansson. They're going to decide how different or how much better the Red Wings blue line is or isn't this year.
I think it creates a fascinating dynamic, though, below Edvinsson and Johansson, if indeed that does work. Because I'm with you. It all hinges on that, and I think that is the most logical path. So if you're carrying 8 defensemen, of those bottom 4, 3 are right-handed, right? So it's who's the odd man out? Are you going to throw a Bernard Docker, a Holl, or a Hamonic on the left side if Gustafsson just isn't cutting it? Because, or are we going to have Albert Johansson on the left side? But then we get back to that, and I'm happy you brought it up, the Petrie conversation, because there's nobody else that can go there. Hamonic may very well be the best of those 3 right-handed options. But you're right, if he's on the second pair, it's a problem. And we're talking about McLellan, and it's a different coaching era, so I'm not saying this is going to happen at all, but we have seen this scenario play out before, where depth signing, depth player, whatever, it's a non-story in the offseason, and then all of a sudden they're playing 15 minutes a night on the second pair, and we're like, that's not what we had in mind. And, now if that happens due to injury or something like that, okay, well, fair enough, because again, it's injuries. You can't control that. You can't help that. And that's where depth is handy, because it's better to have a body to throw at it than a bunch of, well, I hope this prospect doesn't suck. But at the same time, to give the voice of the angry fan base here some airtime, he's not been a good defenseman for a while. Is he better than Holl? Maybe. Is he better than Bernard Docker? Maybe. Absolutely can hear those arguments. And is he a simple plug and play guy? Absolutely. But he's not good, and he hasn't been for a while. It circles back to where are you at in the rebuild? Is William Wallinder worse than Travis Hamonic? Maybe. I'd even argue probably at this point for this season. But you got to find out eventually. And, with Lagesson now, where's Wallinder on the pecking order? 10? In terms of who's going to come up at any point in this season? That's not a position you need to be in at this point in the rebuild. Again, if they went out and we're talking about Matt Grzelcyk right now instead of Travis Hamonic, completely justifiable. Because you're getting a definitive upgrade on the alternatives. I respect what Travis Hamonic has done, who he is, yada, 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 and what he's going to do. But we know that the generous way of phrasing it is that is extremely limited, and that upside is low.
Let me frame it back to you another way, right? So you talk about the stage that they're at in the rebuild. I think you can argue credibly that the line of thinking there is actually like 4 years behind where they're at in the rebuild, right? To me, it's, okay, yeah, right now when we draw this up on a whiteboard, we might say, well, Linder is 10th, right? But these guys are going to play hockey. They're going to play hockey in Traverse City, and we're going to see them next to each other. They're going to play hockey in the preseason, and we're going to be able to compare what they do. And they're going to play hockey for whichever teams they begin the year on. I happen to think that Todd McLellan is not going to play a worse player. So if Wallinder is showing that he's better, or that there's something there that's like demanding, and I happen to think that at some point this year that's going to happen, because I think at the end of last season there were signs that was coming. I think they're going to put William Wallinder in the lineup, not because he's the young guy, but because they're going to play the better player. The question is, if that happens and he's not ready, do you want to have the option of a 15-year NHL veteran to plug into the lineup there? Or do you want to not have that option and be hunting the waiver wire, or, going to Brogan Rafferty? Again, no disrespect to him. It's just like, I don't think having Travis Hamonic in the organization hurts anything. It just gives you more options, right? And I think Todd McLellan is smart enough, decisive enough, has been around the block enough that he will make the call, he will make the decision that he feels is best for the team on the ice, not because of age, but just because if Wallinder's better, that's who he wants on the ice. This team's trying to make the playoffs, and more options just is more options. So that's how I would rationalize it. Again, I don't think it's like a needle moving move at all. It's just one more guy. But if it's of really no cost to you, why not have one more guy?
Well, and that's the thing, because you're right, and especially with the McLellan factor, because it's, we've had 10 years of bad habits that could have got washed out the day he was signed, and to this point seems to have held true. I think the ultimate point where the fan base gets frustrated, I know this is my source of frustration, and I know I'm super guilty of overthinking lineups and prospects and timing and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But where the frustration, I think, truly justifiably comes in from the fan base is we know this guy isn't good. If you felt you needed more depth, there were better options out there. Would you have had to have paid an extra $1 or $2 million? Sure. They're not hard up for cap space. That would have been very easy to do. It's just, why is it always these same type of guys, the well-liked, high character, gritty, veteran, well past their prime or never were that good defensemen? Again, a $1 million or 1 year by 3 for some depth guy who's a little better, fine. It's just, that the best case scenario for Travis Hamonic in Detroit is passable. There's no upside there. It's let's hope he hangs on this game. And, it was the same thing with Justin Holl, and that was just a much more expensive mistake. Again, this is all under
totally
the
different. Yeah.
It's 1 by 1.
Yep.
Genuinely, who cares? But it's just, there's better players out there.
You would say good in the room, better than bad in the room, right?
Yeah. Like it's
the
not
line from the movie.
All these intangibles I talk about are not negatives, but the number one factor has to be, are they good at hockey? And then these are the tiebreakers.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that the Red Wings go out and they have, okay, rank the best guys in the room. We want number 1. I think they look at the whole landscape and they go, these are the options. What are this guy's pros? What are this guy's pros? Like, I know you say okay, like Matt Grizz, you gave one example, right? And there's obviously infinite permutations of guys you could trade for. But guys that you can sign for $1 million 1 year, I think there's only so many guys of that who are going to feel like a needle mover. And so if you're in that pool, of course you're going to gravitate to he's good in the room, he fits our culture, this, that, the other, he's veteran, he's been there. That to me is not, and I know that the reason people are mad about it is exactly what you're saying. It's because they still don't feel like they got better. And so it's hard to look at, this latest in this moves, and it's a lot of depth defensemen are where, when people talk about the pro scouting misses, a lot of it is in that exact pool. And I get that. This is a lot. I mean, Petrie had a phenomenal career. But by the time they got him, he was on his last legs, right? Justin Holl, he had a very real role on a perennial playoff team. By the time the Red Wings got him, it didn't look like he was ready to play more than 12, 13 minutes a night. In the first year, he was really struggled. I will say he did tick up under McLellan, and McLellan had some praise for him at the end of the year that I think, that's why I'm not so sure that Travis Hamonic is penciled in over Justin Holl in the opening night lineup. It would not shock me if Hamonic is the guy who's on the so-called fourth pair until a need arises, right? But that's where I just come back to, it's just one more guy, right? You talk about this player who could be an upgrade, who is good, whether it's $3 million or whether it's, again, to make it the illusion we've already made once, $10 million. He doesn't stop you from doing it, because if you can find a way to get that guy, this whole contract can be buried. The CBA, I think the number's 1.3 or maybe at 1.13. I'd have to go look, but it's a number that $1 million is below. So if at any point you can upgrade it, you just click the button, send him to Grand Rapids, and you're free of it, right? It's not a cap hindrance. So it's just one more body. That's what I keep coming back to. And I know I'm making the only bit of news we've gotten in a month sounds so nothing, but it's kind of how I feel. It's it's another body, sure. If this was a PTO, you wouldn't be worried about this at all, because it's if he's good, you'll keep him on the roster. If he's not, see you later. I think I know that the cash impact is different than a PTO, but to me, it's Yeah, this is like a PTO plus because it's like you don't actually have to release him at the end of it. You can just send him to GR if you don't like what he's got.
It's 1.15 that you can bury, which he comes in under. So, and yeah, you're right. Ultimately, that like I agree. Like it's, you don't want to call it nothing, but it's what it is. And we have said, oh, you can bury this all, and so it's off the cap. There's also the other side of that, which is probably stating the obvious here, but the Griffins could use a guy like him. You know, that organization has seen some movement, and so maybe if he's down with the Griffins, they could use a Travis Hamonic. And even if he's battling with Justin Holl, right? Like the conversation we're going to have next is, can this team have a different destiny if they don't make a change on defense that actually is a needle moving change? But that's not what this move is. It's not what it was intended to be. That's not what it's presented to be. It's a nothing move that's, you know, you're adding it,
right? Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying it's truly meaningless. It's not. It's a depth move. It's like adding a 13th forward who maybe plays in your lineup, maybe he doesn't, right? Like it's not quite the JVR deal, right? I think JVR is going to play a more prominent role, but there's a similar logic that if it doesn't work for JVR, what are you out? Not that much.
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk now about the defense? Because that's what people who are frustrated by this, they're thinking, well, this doesn't fix the defense. And I can sit here and say, well, it wasn't meant to, but it's still a fair question, and one that I champion all the time in the show, which is, how are you going to fix this defense? Because again, I think on forward, do you have a definitive solution? No, but you have a lot of potential solutions. Even if it's a rotating cast of solutions throughout the season, you have young guys who can come in and potentially surprise, like Danielson and Mazur. Maybe Kopp really does stick at 2C now that he's healthy again, and it moves Kasper up to the wing. You have options at forward. It's not, completely a failure. On defense, again, unless Bernard Docker is some Jake Wallman-like revelation, like you mentioned, Max, it's going to be really hard to see how this defense is going to be at all different other than just internal improvement from, Edvinsson, Johansson, and a bit Seider. Am I wrong in thinking if you want to be able to compete with Ottawa and Montreal and how they're moving forward, you have to make a move on defense?
It depends what you think you're going to get from Edvinsson and Johansson, right? Like Edvinsson, I think, I almost would predict that Edvinsson's going to take a big step that will result in some improvement. I think I would, right? Like I think I saw enough from him over the course of the last year, and I have enough belief in the track record of Trent Yawney to know that when a player with this toolkit, with this desire to be better, with this desire to win, meets a coach who has developed defensemen about as well as I can imagine an assistant coach having a track record of that, only good things are going to come. And Johansson seemed to earn so much trust and respect from this staff, deservedly, that even though there were stretches where I think he was more surviving than thriving on that second pair, and even if I think his best role is going to ultimately be on a third pair long term, I'm not ruling out that he's going to have like a meaningful improvement to be like, I have called him like a mini Olli Mata for a few years, and that's still what I see here. And Olli Mata is at his best when he's the steady guy on a third pair, but he got by as the partner for Filip Hronek, and Filip Hronek played his best hockey, I thought, with Olli Mata when those two were a pair on the second pair. So can Johansson make that leap in one summer? We'll see. I think a lot of it depends on, can he get stronger, because his tools, including his brain, his feet, and his competitiveness, that's everything you would want in a player who we're talking about in that role. He just happens to be really, really skinny. And you never know. Like, I haven't heard anything on what the status of his weight is right now. You would hope that if he could add like 10 pounds, all of a sudden that's really compelling. And that year two is a year where we often see guys make a jump. I know sometimes there's also the sophomore slump and, hockey, right? But it wouldn't shock me at all if Albert Johansson is ready to take that step into being like a legit 4-5 swing guy, which you can argue he kind of already was, but just at a higher level, right? His underlying numbers left something to be desired for sure last year. But if Edvinsson takes a step and Johansson takes a step, and again, I think they're two of the three most likely players on this team to take a step, that's significant. And I think that does it give them a top 8 blue line in the East? I don't know. I really don't. But it at least, it depends on what the next step looks like, but it at least puts them in competitive territory. And so that's what they're banking on. And I think that's a story up and down the team. Goes to the forwards. Guys like Kasper, guys who are coming up, Mazur, Danielson. JVR and Appleton were nice ads, but and Gibson was obviously like a defining ad for their offseason. The whole trajectory comes down to the young guys and how much they improve.
With Johansson, I agree with what you're saying. Like, the guy showed mid-season in a way that would have been impossible. If someone suggested that to us in an overtime, we would have said, yeah, don't bank on it. And he did it. He made a huge leap forward and stuck on that second pair. I know what you meant about the underlyings, but even when we were watching him and you're like, you can see this guy, he's hanging in there, but some games it felt like he was hanging in there. Like that kind of game 50, game 55 kind of feel where you're just getting banged by a hard forechecking team and the physicality. It's not that he was crumbling, but you can see you're like, it'd be so good to just shelter this kid a little bit. And doesn't mean that he can't, like you said, have a big offseason and really build that strength. Like, it's a baptism by fire once you have time to prepare and let your body heal and recover a bit. Sure, that's when you address it. But let's say he does take that step forward, even if it's small. Yes, what I'm about to say is true up and down the lineup, including the forwards, but this D-core is one injury away, like even a minor injury away from just feels a bit like a house of cards. There's not no solutions, but they just feel so tenuous to me.
Yeah, and there's only so many ways to play this at this point, right? Like is it Seider, Edvinsson, and Sherratt, Hamonic, Sherratt, Johansson? Like, okay, I don't think I like that better than Sherratt, Seider, Edvinsson, Johansson. You can get down if you have to play Johansson on the third pair. One thing that kind of came to my mind is if that's where you're putting him, you probably want a big veteran next to him, and in that case, like, is Erik Gustafsson on the second? Is he your second pair right D with Edvinsson, or is that one of Holl or Hamonic, or is that Bernard Docker? If Bernard Docker really hits, that's probably what you'd hope for, I guess. But it's, again, with Hamonic, it's another option that gives you a little extra permutation ability for how you can structure these things. Because going in with the 7, it was like, okay, what do you do? Because I don't think you can play Johansson and Gustafsson on a pair together. I don't think that size-wise, profile-wise, works very well. So at least this gives you one more piece of flexibility. But, we all said going into the offseason, like, if you can add in one area, it probably needs to be the blue line. Like, top line left wing, it's a factor, but the biggest thing they needed was a top 4 D, ideally a second pair D, maybe on the right side, maybe on the left, and you can play around with it. They didn't get that. And they're going to feel the repercussions of that one way or another. I think they tried, but they didn't get it. And they, there's a month left till training camp. So maybe they'll find something out there yet. But, to your ultimate point, Ryan, is like, it is betting a lot on the internal improvement, on your coaching staff, on your young players, on your development staff, to think that the blue line is going to make a big jump. You never know how much internal improvement can be. Right? I mean, we saw it over the course of last season, not just with one guy, but with 2 or 3, Kasper, Soderblom, Johansson. Sometimes it pops really suddenly and really significantly, and you have to hope for that. But that's basically the crux of the bet.
I know we were talking about it a bit before we started recording, but to Ryan's initial point, is there a single position in the entire NHL where there's a bigger drop-off from number 1 to number 2 than the right side of the Red Wings D? You don't wish it on anybody, but if Seider's out for 2 weeks, it's a disaster. Like, what? I can't come up with any formulation of a defense without him there where this is even remotely passable. And yeah, the internal improvement is the hope. We talk about where are the Red Wings at in the uphill climb. And yes, everything should be hinging on internal improvement at this point because they've invested so much draft capital into a lot of this team that's the plan. This is the plan that they have, the path they have chosen, and they need to at least ride it out to an extent. But that's a lot to ask of 2 I don't remember exactly how old, but we'll call it very young NHL defenseman to play that role. But they did do it last year. Hopefully the sophomore slump avoids, but I don't know. It's just house of cards is the right way to put it. I like that phrase because if Bernard Docker doesn't hit, if Gustafsson doesn't bounce back, we know what Holl and Hamonic are. It could get dark fast. But if the internal improvement hits, then everything's roses.
I will say, you brought up Wallinder, and he's not the only one, right? Wallinder can play the right side. Axel Sandin Pellikka is another guy who I don't think is going to be ready for this year, but he's in the system. Shai Buyam is a guy who, again, we'll see if it's this year, but I think there's NHL regular potential in there. I have a harder time seeing NHL regular potential with Antti Tuomisto, but if you had to call him up for 2 weeks, you could do it. And yes, I do think signing a veteran like Hamonic makes each individual one of those call-ups seem a little less, again, like likely. But to the same idea that I have when I talked about it, it's like all it is options. And those guys are still like, yeah, if every single thing goes wrong for the Red Wings blue line, they're going to be bad. Couldn't you say that about like 2/3 of teams in the league though? Like, and I get that there are lower upside bets that you like for when you're saying like, if this goes well, if this goes wrong, like the upside case, I would say for most of the Red Wings likely blue line outside the top 4 is lower. It's low. But on a couple of the prospects, there is upside. And so it's like you hope, and whether you believe in like the hockey gods or the law of averages or anything else, you hope that literally not everything is going to go wrong. You're hoping that you're going to get some good surprises, and you're probably going to get some bad surprises, and they're probably going to level out. And we'll see if that's the case. I don't know if the Red Wings have put themselves in a position to expect a better than average outcome like on net for that. But I think I'll say it a third time. I think all they've done is just give themselves more irons in the event that things do go wrong in some place. Like, it's possible they have 3 injuries at one time. And at that point, like, do you want to be playing an NHL veteran who, has struggled in the last couple of years in Travis Hamonic? Or do you want to be demoing Antti Tuomisto in a playoff race? There might be people out there who would just like, I just want to see Tuomisto use a second-round pick on him. Like, let's at least see it. I get that. But I do think a team in a playoff race is going to find value in if a lot of stuff goes wrong, here's a guy who at least has been there, who's not going to be starstruck. The lights aren't going to phase him. There's something to that. And it's just one option. And if the coaches don't think he's good, they're not going to play him, I don't think, over the other options. But I don't know.
Before we go to break, you want to know my stupid offseason? I have no reason to believe this, but this is just while there's no hockey going on, I can have the dumb optimism take is. What if Gustafsson flips back to the left side and just weirdly has a bounce back year and can stick as either second pair and you move Edvinsson up, or third pair and you're just a steady third pair left? Like, and he has a decent season. He's steady. I don't want to say Olli Maatta because those are 2 very different players, but just within what they can do on the ice.
Well, Shane Gostisbehere, Gustafsson's had years where he had 50 points.
Yeah, like I think, what if that happens? Because that would be, and one of you two mentioned it not too long ago, but that could be something to the tune of like, oh, if Bernard Docker hits or Travis Hamonic is actually kind of a steady Eddie back there, not too terrible kind of thing. That could be huge because Gustafsson was last offseason. We said quite a bit, a lot hinges on how Gustafsson's going to come in and try to solidify that right side. And it didn't happen. And we saw the ramifications of that. Maybe he bounces back. I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to be like a great top 4 defenseman in this league, but we were also watching him, and there's kind of shades of, maybe it's unfair to say, but when we were watching Tarasenko, where you're like, there's more to this player than what we're seeing in terms of output on the ice, and something's just not clicking. Do you see a world where something starts to click for Gustafsson?
Yeah, I do see a world. I'm not saying I'm predicting it, but that's exactly the kind of thing I mean, right? Like, you're going to have some bad outcomes. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have players you're like, what is going on with this guy? And you're going to have some guys where you're like, oh, that was a pretty good year, right? Like, did anyone foresee Andrew Kopp having the kind of impact that he did before he got hurt? And that's a legit bounce back, right? Same kind of deal. I'm trying to think, there have been a few examples in the last few years of guys who I was like, this guy's
Sherratt.
Sherratt, a great example, right? So I'm not saying that they're going to rise up and have a career year or anything, but like I do think the gap sometimes between a player struggling to our eye and being passable or better to our eye is less than we think. Like it's a few steps here, it's a couple less mistakes, it's 2 or 3 better decisions a month, and it all adds up in like a big way. And it's a lot more possible than I think we give credit for. I'm not saying that's what I think is going to happen, that he's going to have a career year, that it's going to be any of this, but it's one of the many, just in the same way that things can go wrong, things can go right. And all you do when you add more bodies is, put more in play.
Well, this is where the McLellan factor could come in a lot, because even when Gustafsson was really struggling, he still looked competent with the puck. You knew he was going to make a good first pass. You knew he could transport it. You knew if it got into the O zone, he was going to be fine. It was the off the puck stuff that scared the ever-living hell out of you. But maybe the McLellan system and the small tweaks he makes, maybe those are the minor differences that gets him going. And all of a sudden, he's not a defensive stalwart, but he doesn't scare the crap out of you every time the puck's on his side of the ice. Little things like that.
All right, with that, we are going to take a quick break, and when we're back, more from the Red Wings and the world of the NHL back after this.
They said 37 minutes on a 1-year, $1 million deal couldn't be done. I defy them.
3 main ingredients go into our early morning offseason episodes: sarcasm, a healthy dose of blind optimism for a deep playoff run next season, and really good coffee. And that's where we have to give a shout out to Coffee Cult. We started drinking it after one too many late night editing sessions, and it honestly ruined other coffee for us. You can actually taste the difference, seriously. They use specialty grade Arabica beans, work directly with farmers, and they roast everything after you order. So you're not getting stale beans that have been sitting around. It's roasted fresh and it shows. The dark roast, which is Evan's personal favorite, is smooth, full-bodied, and has notes of caramel and chocolate without that burnt aftertaste. The Sumatra is awesome and my go-to, really rich, deeper flavor with a bit of that brown sugar note to it. And they've got tons of single origin options for you as well. Colombia, Brazil, Kenya, you name it. Starting August 11th, they're running a back-to-school sale, so all of the Coffee Cult apparel is 50% off, no code necessary, and you can get 15% off any coffee with the code WWP, plus free US shipping if you spend over $49. Check them out at coffeecult.com. That's KOFFEEKULT.com. Use code WWP, get the discount, grab some cool apparel, and enjoy better coffee. Coffee Cult, spelt with a K. Back to school season is just around the corner, which means busy mornings, packed schedules, and way less time to think about what's for dinner. Instead of hitting the drive-thru, do what we've been doing and use Tempo, the convenient fix for quick, fresh, and actually good meals. With over 20 different options updated weekly, Tempo keeps you fueled and focused, all in less time than it takes to find your kid's backpack or to watch a lead disappear in a third-period meltdown. And these aren't bland microwave meals. We just tried the chicken cordon bleu and the filet mignon with twice-baked mashed potatoes. Both tasted like something we'd order at a restaurant, but they were on the table in just 3 minutes. Every meal is single-serve, portioned properly, and made with real ingredients you can pronounce. No mystery meat, no guilt, just food that fits into your life, whether you're at the rink, at work, or recording an episode. For a limited time, Tempo is offering our listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. That's tempomeals.com/wingedwheel for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/wingedwheel. Rules and restrictions may apply. Nobody plans for hair loss, just like nobody plans to be stuck in their own zone for a full 2 minutes. But when it happens, you need a game plan. Hims gives you access to personalized treatments so you can work toward thicker, fuller hair and start playing offense again. They use clinically proven ingredients that are like true top-line talent when it comes to slowing hair loss and regrowing hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Getting started is like lining up for the opening face-off, simple and straightforward. You fill out an online intake form, a licensed medical provider reviews it, and if prescribed, your treatment gets shipped right to your door. No road trips to a clinic, no long shifts in a waiting room. You can choose from chewables, oral medications, sprays, or serums. Basically, whatever fits into your daily lineup. And with no hidden fees or surprise costs, you know exactly what's on the scoreboard. If you're tired of not knowing what to do about hair loss and of my terrible hockey analogies, check out Hims. For simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/wingedwheel. That's hims.com/wingedwheel for your free online visit. hims.com/wingedwheel. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Welcome back. We talked plenty about the Red Wings that are on the team now. Let's get into this world of trade rumors. And again, I rue every single insider who pretended and lied and said this is going to be a busy offseason, because we all knew it wasn't going to be the case.
Yeah, if you actually believe them, it's your fault, not theirs.
But the 8th annual summer of offer sheets didn't deliver for you guys?
Oh my God.
18th annual summer of offer sheets?
It just, people have cap space. GMs don't feel a squeeze. They're literally on vacation. That's why. Anyhow, there are still names out there, and part of this is going to be bringing guys back up because, Max, I want to get your take on it, and part of it's just, discussing again. I think because we were talking defense, just a quick update. We've mentioned in previous shows, Erik Karlsson's still available, and there's a lot of questions coming in about, are the Red Wings interested? Does this make sense? You have to presume yes, and yes is the answer to that. I do believe the Red Wings have interest in him, but a lot of teams are going to have interest in Erik Karlsson. It's really cool to see such a prolific forward who for some reason hangs back and cosplays as a defenseman. He could do really great things. It's like Shane Gostisbehere on steroids in both directions. Like the offense is somehow even better, but the defense is somehow even worse. On the right side could be a solution. But again, like we've mentioned on previous episodes, that cost of acquisition, as of right now, Kyle Dubas has no reason to come off the high price that he's setting. So I don't know what you think about it, Max.
I disagree with that. I really do.
You think so?
Is there a more obvious team that needs a tank year than the Pittsburgh Penguins? Like, they need a top pick, right? Like they just had a nice draft class, I would say. They added talent to their pipeline, but it's not like a star-laden draft class. They added a bunch. They made a pipeline that was thin, deeper, but they need a star in multiple, realistically, for their long-term future. And guys like Karlsson and Rust and Raquel are legit good players who, A, will prevent them from being as bad as I think they need to be. That's to go along with Sidney Crosby, who I think we all agree is, they're not going to trade him unless he asks for it. And B, if you don't trade guys like Karlsson, Rust, and Raquel now, all you're doing, like the market is perfect for it. There's really not that many other guys out there. They're all, except for maybe Karlsson, but Karlsson's Four Nations was so good that I think there probably is value to him. Like, there is incentive to move all three of these guys before you're talking about second-round picks instead of first-round picks. Like, if you could go back and do the Red Wings version of this in 2014 or something like that, and you can get out of some of these contracts before it's 2017, and you're talking about trading Nicholas Kronwall or something in 2014, or you're talking about trading Justin Abdelkader, you might have actually been able to do that and get real value for those things before it fell off and all of a sudden you're settling for scraps on it, right? If it's as clear to them as it is to me, and I would think is to you guys, that they are not a playoff challenger this year, why would you hold these guys and make your draft pick worse and let the assets depreciate? That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's a part of it for me. They're all north of 30, or like they're not young. And are all three of them going to fall off a cliff this year? No. But they might. And that puts it, like, it was that, like, the whole Mike Green fiasco in Detroit. Like, he had great value for a while. They waited. He got hurt. What did they get? Like a 4th-round pick for him or something like that? It was just awful timing. And yeah, the point of they're too good to be a lottery team with them also kind of works. The rest of the team's so bad, it's going to hurt them. Like, value's high right now, especially for someone like Karlsson with that contract. If he has a slow October, that's doomed. He'll have to spend 3 months after that proving, oh wait, no, he in fact can still play. But he's going to be doing it on this version of the Pittsburgh Penguins. That would be heroic work to be able to recover from a bad month in this season in terms of trade values. So there is a lot of risk. And
And you let it get to the trade deadline, you're competing with other teams that are unloading guys versus right now, like all the buzz for 2 months has been the only team that wants to sell is Pittsburgh. Well, take advantage because that means you're the only team that has something the teams that want to get better can bid for.
Yeah, the only team selling is Pittsburgh, and they've sold nothing. Great job, guys.
I think Erik Karlsson would be a lot of fun. And it's a short term, but it would be a fun solution. And it would actually not completely solve things because, again, I'm one of those wackos who thinks defensemen should be able to defend. But let's let go of that for a second. It would solve quite a bit on the right side for Detroit, just in terms of adding talent. I think Rust would be a better, like, medium-term solution. Raquel...
But he's probably more expensive.
Yes, but I'm more willing to pay for that, though, right? Like, I think, cost to what you're getting, there's more meat on the bone for Russ, even though the peak isn't as high as what Karlsson's going to bring you. Brad will be sadder, which is a bonus, but with the cap going up now, I don't really care about the number for Rust or Raquel. Anyone would be happy to have Raquel on the Red Wings as well, and that'd be a nice answer at forward too. Any one of those guys. It's a good point, Max. Yeah, maybe they do have motivation. I think the way I think about things is I've watched a team with like a few good players still suck for a long time now. So I see Karlsson and I see Rust and Raquel, and I don't really see the Pittsburgh Penguins as, firing up the standings. Maybe they get a hot goalie. Maybe Sidney Crosby wills them to way too many wins, and then they're motivated. But I still think they're probably pegged for the close to the bottom of the league as is.
Oh, I mean, where did they finish last year? They finished like 10th from the bottom?
In and around there, yeah.
9th from the bottom. Like that's the ceiling. I agree. They're not getting better this year. So they're going to get a top 10 pick, but I'm just saying the Red Wings are living right now what happens if you don't get top 5 picks. They got 1. Like be bad enough and the Red Wings honestly I think did tank aggressively enough to the lottery kept bumping them down to 6, right? But it's like if you let yourself be in the position where you're picking 8 every year. I don't know how you find those like the Keaton Verhoffs, the Ivar Stenbergs, let alone the Gavin McKennas, Tynan Lawrence or whatever, like it's if you pick at 8 or 9 or 10, you're getting a good player, but you're going to end up kind of in this situation where you just never got the pieces you really need to. And maybe the argument is don't bottom out with Sidney Crosby, wait till build up a deep system and they'll come of age and then Crosby will retire or leave and you'll truly bottom out and then you'll get your star and it comes into a better situation. Like I can buy that as an argument. But if it's me, I'm looking at it and I'm just saying like I don't see any way they make the playoffs. So and we know where they're headed. So why hang on to it and risk the asset depreciating, basically, the value depreciating?
I'm going to title this episode, Kyle Dubas, listen to this.
No. I mean, I've said it on other shows too. Like, it's not about, I think Dubas is really smart. And I think he took a lot of heat in Toronto. And I don't know that he would even necessarily disagree with some of the stuff I'm saying. I'm probably just oversimplifying, which is kind of what I do as a, writer. I have to oversimplify everything to an extent. But it's just how I see it. You know what I mean?
Mason McTavish, Max. What would you give up for Mason McTavish? Because the fun question is, what would you give up for Erik Karlsson? But Mason McTavish is a tough one. Because what we've talked about on the show is that bar is probably Axel Sandin Pellikka. And every fan base overrates their own prospects. But it's a unique situation. Detroit doesn't have a lot to say in the pipeline for defense. And Axel Sandin Pellikka is the heir apparent to, fixing that right side. But Mason McTavish is a young, already productive, two-way, Yzerman type center. Do you do that?
Well, yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat, but my guess is like Anaheim has Olin Zellweger, who I'm not saying is identical to Axel Sandin Pellikka, but it's a similar profile. Like to me, if I'm Anaheim, my ask is starting with Nate Danielson and Anton Johansson. And Ryan, you've done reporting on Anton Johansson and trade interest in him, and I think profile-wise, that's more like what the Ducks could use, is like a bigger body, a little edge, a little meanness on the right side. And then in Danielson, you'd be replacing the, top 6 center, defensive conscience, again, I guess McTavish's defense in the NHL actually probably hasn't been where I would have expected it to be at his draft time. But I think at least it's a hard sell for Anaheim because I think they also are in a position where they need to get better. But if you're trading McTavish, it is very hard to, in real time, get better. And I think what you have to focus on is, okay, does it at least make the build make more sense? So to me, like, that's what I would be asking for if I was Anaheim. And it's a tougher question for me there because I think the two-way center is harder to replace than the, skilled offensive defenseman. As talented as Sandin Pellikka is, I just think you can find them a little more readily as long as you're willing to take the swing on them. But I think that's probably where the offer has to be, I think, for Anaheim to consider. Is that fair?
I think that's kind of what I was getting at last episode, which is like, we're talking about Sandin Pellikka and a lot of us are drawing the line at no there. And I'm like, you probably have to start with that. Brad made an interesting point in the last couple episodes, which is, Max, you just said that about the two-way center and it's a more valuable position. Does Detroit care less about that now because they have Kasper, who's shown that he can do it, and because they have Danielson, who they believe in? And I know you really believe in Danielson too, especially Max. So do you almost say, well, you don't need to make this move? What is that looking at? It's not looking a gift horse in the mouth because it's not a done deal, but would that be kind of looking a gift horse in the mouth?
It's fair. I mean, like, the argument would be, if you could hit fast forward 3 years on Nate Danielson, would you do it? Would you pay X amount of money or X amount of, capital to do it and give up the ELC and whatever? Because I don't think they're exact clones of players, but it's still a similar like role fit, right? Like, your production wise, I think that they probably slot into a similar range. So to me, like, that's another reason that Danielson, I think, makes more sense than Sandin Pellikka, is like, it's at least like, okay, the way you're building this out is this. I would be more hesitant to give up Danielson than I would to give up Sandin Pellikka. I think if you traded Sandin Pellikka for McTavish, then I would slot McTavish on the left wing or the 2C, and you pump Kasper to the left wing, and you solve that problem, and you've got this like, oh, great. Like, now you have your young 2C and you have your young 1L gritty LW, and in either case, that's true. And you just so happen to have Danielson still coming. Like, that, you're just, really, I think, probably giddy if you're the Red Wings and you could do that. But that's another reason I just don't see it working out in that construction, because I just don't see why Anaheim would be willing to do that. I guess you could move Cutter Gauthier to the middle, but you probably love him as a sniper on the wing with size and a big shot and speed. So, yeah, to your point, Ryan, like, it's not a necessity. And that's what we talked about earlier. It's like, coming into the offseason, 1LW was an obvious hole, but defense is the obvious need. Like, that's the thing. It's like, can you get by without upgrading the defense? And I think you can get by without trading for Mason McTavish, but it's just, he's a really good player. And if you could hit fast forward on Nate Danielson, you'd do it. So I think there's an argument for it.
All right, one last name, not a trade rumor necessarily, although we'll see come March, but Kyle Connor's name has been out there because it's slow. And so, people are just saying, here's what could make sense, and not necessarily moves happening. But Kyle Connor's without a contract after this upcoming season ends. And, the story's been out there forever of that's the Michigan kid coming home, and he could solve a lot of problems for Detroit, scoring winger, hell of a shot. He would command a big number. With the cap going up, he's going to be 8 digits, you'd have to think. And would he have interest in coming back and playing for his hometown team? Now, I haven't heard anything definitively. I've been digging into this. We've all been digging into this on forever, years. And some people say, yeah, of course, who wouldn't? And some people say, I don't know necessarily that that's a driving factor for him. The fact that there isn't an extension in place is interesting, but I don't think it means he's leaving Winnipeg. Winnipeg, fairly or not, is one of those teams where until a guy is signed, everyone assumes they want to leave Winnipeg. Well, he's already stayed there once. They already signed Hellebuck and kept Hellebuck. They've kept guys when people thought they were gone. Is Kyle Connor, on your radar seriously as an option? And, maybe an obvious answer, but you kind of throwing a bag at him.
Not only would I throw a bag at him, I would try to preempt the line and avoid what happened in this year's free agency class, where every good player either gets traded and extends or extends with their current team before it gets to July 1. I wouldn't even take the chance. Of course, you would go after Kyle Connor. He's a dynamic player who would immediately be probably their leading scorer, but if not, certainly one of their 2 or 3. He fits the age range. He makes them better now. Yeah, I would go after Kyle Connor. I go after him hard. Now, to your point, when I've checked in on this, and I haven't done it recently because I did it earlier in the year, and the sense I got was like, yeah, I mean, there's no obvious flag that he's like trying to leave Winnipeg. He seems pretty content there. He just had a fantastic season. That always helps things. So it's not like top of mind to me that this is like an imminent thing, but I've said it on other shows too of like, yeah, if you think you can get Kyle Connor, you do what you got to do to get Kyle Connor. You don't take the chance of trying to get him to July 1 and using the hometown thing. Use the hometown thing to get the extension done when you trade for him.
In previous years, I might have said, no, you wait. But you just can't do this. You can't do the definition of an insanity thing. We've seen how the NHL works. I agree. You have to trade. You can't think of it as a lost asset by trading for it because, okay, Detroit has a ton of prospects that are really valuable prospects. A lot of people would agree, most people would agree, you deal a few of those if you could have top-end players that made this team, a bona fide playoff team or at least pushing for a divisional seed. But that's all these guys, all these top players, yeah, to your point, they're gone by July 1. So if you can jump the line. Okay, before we take another quick break here, before the final segment of the Winged Wheel podcast, I want to do a quick shout out to Oakland Hills and Phil Caffer over there. He had myself and Ken Daniels out on the course. Phenomenal time. Just the entire crew and that entire facility, they do an amazing, amazing job. Obviously a gorgeous course. We played the South course today and they got my I mean, you both have seen my golf swing, I think. They got me around there. They somehow managed to dial in my putter, birdied 17. That is all I'm going to tell you about that round. But to Phil and Michael and Jack and Eric and all you guys over there, Oakland Hills, incredible, incredible place. Such an amazing experience, and they deserve all the credit in the world. They do a phenomenal job. So thank you again. And Ken and I had a blast. Ken is nuking the ball, by the way. He won't tell you that, but he is just crushing that thing. All right. Take a quick break, and when we're back, the final segment here on the Winged Wheel podcast.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast. Again, if you want to join the Dub Club, get access to our bonus overtime episodes, the bonus off-season episodes, the bonus content like the poutine taste test. Brad, you and I have to do our Twisters drinking game watch, which we'll have a good excuse for at some point soon. The Discord, the giveaways, all of that and lots more. Let's take some questions from our patrons. Wings in the Wild says, what does a DeBrincat extension look like? Also, I have to say goal of the year for me goes to the Marco effort goal against LA. Great shout. And yeah, we're not too far. We're focusing on Edvinsson extension, but what does a DeBrincat extension look like with a new cap?
It probably becomes the highest AAV on the Red Wings at that point, I think. I mean, especially if he produces like he did this past season, knocking on the door of 40 goals with the place the cap is going to, the fact that he was willing to take the 4-year deal the first time. I think the question is probably more on term. Like, does he do another 4 or 5-year deal, which I'm sure is what the Red Wings would love to have him do. And I think you could justify it on the sense of like, yeah, you probably wanted an 8-year deal around, $8.5 or $9 million the first time, but you got 7.8 on the front 4. Now you're going to get like 9+ on the second 4. That probably was a gamble worthwhile. Maybe you could sell that, especially if he wants to be there. But I think it would have to be the highest AAV on the Red Wings.
I think it has to start with a 9, yeah.
Assuming it keeps going the way it's going. He is getting to the age where maybe regression starts happening. I don't think he's particularly close to it, but if in theory it could hit in the next 2 years, and that changes the dynamic a little bit, but I wouldn't count on it.
No, I
he is a guy who I think there would have to be a little hesitation on going 8 years with for that reason, right? Like, or sorry, not 8. 8's going to be gone. 7 years with, right? Like, I think you're definitely targeting try to get that on 4 or 5 if you're going to make him the highest paid player.
There was reporting that the part of the CBA or the CBA doesn't take effect unless there's negotiation for this specific factor until September 2026. So you could, in theory, sign the extension next offseason before September. again, we'll see how that actually shakes out and how the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed. But, you could still have the 8 years there. With DeBrincat, he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who's going to start to decline before 30. I think he plays a hard game, but like his talent's with his shot. And we've seen him even adjust his game now since he's been with the Red Wings. I honestly, would you do 8x8 with him? I wouldn't mind keeping him until age 35 if you can get him at a great deal.
I think I would have a hard time with 8 years on it. Like, saving a little bit on the AAV, like, is, it's nice, but I don't know. Because 8's not going to be that big in that number of years. I mean, I'm trying to think what year that even is. It's like 2034. The cap, if cap keeps going up like $7-8 million a year, like it's 8's going to be like 6 right now, and 6 right now is not a big deal. So I see your logic. I just think that's, to me, where you try to go like 5 times 9 if it's me. But
all right, next question from Gretzky Had It Lost It says, in announcing expansion, do you think the NHL should continue doing so ad hoc as it did with Vegas and Seattle, or all 4 teams that will get them to 36 like it did with Nashville, Columbus, Minnesota, and Atlanta in the late 20th century? What do you think are the pros and cons of each? Oh, I think it's all cons if you bring them all in at once. I think it dilutes the excitement of the teams. It dilutes the hell out of the talent pool. I don't even want to think logistically of what that looks like. I don't think you can do it all at once. 2 in a year feels like a lot, which they might have to do a couple times.
I completely agree. I don't think teams could withstand the hit that they would be taking with 4 different teams going under the current expansion rules at the same time. And those teams, to say nothing of it, wouldn't be getting as good because they're sharing the available player pool between 4. So I don't think anyone is served by all 4 at the same time.
Yeah, no. I mean, they'd be taking coaches at that point with the expansion teams. All right, next one here from Andrew Stroud says, if you're selling the Red Wings as a team to a new hockey fan, what are you showing them on YouTube? Oh, God, there's so much. Fight night, the whole Colorado rivalry, Fight Night at the Joe, every time a Red Wings goalie fought Patrick Waugh, just a Pavel Datsyuk highlight video, hit random video on A-Wood 40 on YouTube. It's just, you can't go wrong. Dominic Hasek flipping Marian Gaborik.
Zetterberg Conn Smythe shift.
Oh, yeah.
And the Winged Wheel podcast.
Thank you, Max. I appreciate it. Yeah. Venmo Max, $6. Appreciate it, buddy.
I'm cheap, baby.
Hey, man, that's all I got. I had to borrow $1 from Brad. That's going to financially ruin him. All right, last one here from Himmy Howard says, have you guys heard anything around the league relating to Bernard Docker's choice to sign with the Red Wings? I think there's a growing hope that he can be this gem for us, but it's hard for me to see that hope when a 25-year-old right-hand D got less than $1 million in UFA. To me, that doesn't signal confidence from any of the league's scouts. Fair question. If we have all this hope in this guy, why did Buffalo let him walk, and why did Detroit get him so cheap?
Well, again, and I'm not trying to get people's hopes up by referring to the Wallman thing, but the reason that I'm referring to it is exactly what you're describing, right? Wallman was the 3rd piece in the Nicoletti deal that the Red Wings made with the Blues. He was going to be a free agent that summer, basically, if he didn't, because the way it works is if you don't play a certain number of games by a certain age, you can become a free agent early instead of the typical age 27 or 7 years in the NHL. I believe Wallman was on the cusp of becoming one of those, so he was a throw-in addition to a 2nd-round pick and Oscar Sundqvist. By all definitions, like, those throw-in pieces very rarely become anything, and for the same reason, these like cheap 1-year prove-it deals really become anything. So percentage-wise, I don't think it's a high chance that he's going to become anything. But why? Because of the tools, right? If you can skate well and you can shoot well and he has some pedigree, you take a gamble on that, right? And it's a cheap gamble, and you're hoping that a player who has, not a ton of size, but a little bit of size and those tools, you get him in the right environment, you get him with the right coaches, and you hope something blossoms. And I don't think I would stake my, whatever I'm projecting the Red Wings to be this year, which I haven't quite settled on yet, it will have nothing to do with Jacob Bernard Docker's growth. It's a lottery ticket, basically. But why do people hope it? Because sometimes it happens, right? So, Gustav Forsling was on waivers, I believe, when the Florida Panthers got him. I don't think Jacob Bernard-Docker is Gustav Forsling, but it sometimes happens, and it's often guys of kind of this profile that it happens with when it does. I still wouldn't put more than a 10% chance on it, but that's why people would have the hope.
All right. With that, it's late night. We are going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you to Max Bultman of The Athletic Detroit, as always, Winged Wheel Podcast contributor, and coming in, saving our skins in the offseason. Appreciate everyone for spending your time listening to the show, especially as we are undoubtedly just sounding like we're dragging at the end of the day. To all the sponsors of the Winged Wheel Podcast, thank you so much. And to our Patreon supporters, we could not do this show without you. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support the show. And if you want to help us out, but Patreon is not for you, you can help us out just by subscribing wherever you're getting the show, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Subscribe, hit the thumbs up, like the video or the episode, leave a review, a rating, the stars. All of that helps a ton. Tell a friend about the show. So many ways you can help us out. To our name level supporters on Patreon, we cannot do this without you. Arjun Shankar, check the mail, buddy. You got something fun coming your way. Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, below average ball hockey goalie, Rain Dano, Sea Lion, Darb EQ. Welcome back to the name level sponsors, Darb EQ, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Suiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, August Monk Christensen, Beer League legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Butts Carlton, Carl Butina Nanowski, CB55, Chris Black, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hale, Evan Licking His Balls, Golf Balls, Give Blood Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood. Now I have to learn how to click on a Macintosh. Kip Tira Jr., Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt McKay, Mr. Kuzi, Podgy713, RA, Recreating Evan in the Aggregate, Roy Donk, Sam Bankson, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ortley, That's What I Appreciate About You, William, Wings Fan in Chicago, Eyes Are Plan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, AA Ron, All Motor No Hands, Angie, Ann Stanislavski, Antonio Gracias, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, Big Cheese, Brad Simmons, Carl Thames, C.E. Hayes, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton, Corey Parita, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans Brown, Pomeranian, Falkness, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, Jacob Marsh, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, JM Rhapsody, Jim, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Matt Keeler, Mike Asher, Mitch Minier, Monica Lewin-Skibbity. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was America. Oh, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Peter Swanson, Rosie Posey, Roy Mudbutt, Steven, Stranded in Arkansas, that other guy, the Hodag, the Hat123, Stranded in Arkansas, brand new name level supporter. Welcome to the Dub Dub Club. Trent Thurl, our good friend, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, you Bernadian, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. Off to the bonus overtime.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.